This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real-life emotions and everyday experiences. Chapter 1, The Midnight Phone Call. When the doctor said, "Your dad has terminal cancer. He has 3 to 6 months to live," the very first thing I thought wasn't that he was dying. It was, "Mom, I'm about to have to take care of the man who killed you." And right away, I hated myself for thinking that. The phone rang at 2:17 in the morning. I knew right then it wasn't good news. Good news never calls at this hour. The shrill ringing ripped through the quiet, and I just lay there in bed, staring wide-eyed into the dark, letting it ring 2 more times before I finally reached for the phone on my nightstand. "Hello? Sorry to bother you so late. Is this Sarah Collins? I'm a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, calling about Robert Collins." I sat straight up. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. He had a heart attack tonight. Luckily, a neighbor found him and got him to the hospital in time. But when we ran some scans, we found... The nurse hesitated. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall in front of me, where a picture of my mom hangs. She's smiling gently in the frame. "Ma'am, are you still there?" "Yeah." "The doctors found lung cancer. It's terminal. It's already spread. They estimate he has about 3 to 6 months left." 3 to 6 months. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, even though I knew the nurse couldn't see me through the phone. "He's awake now and asking about you. He wants to see you." I closed my eyes. In my head, my mom was still smiling, and my dad, Robert, was standing in the corner of the church at Mom's funeral, his face blank, not crying, not saying a word. "I'll come," I said, and hung up. I lay there in bed for another 5 minutes. White ceiling. A crack running from the corner of the room all the way to the light fixture. I'd stared at it hundreds of nights. The nights I couldn't sleep after Mom died. Now I looked at it again, trying to feel something. Sad, mad, scared. I didn't feel anything at all. Just one sentence, playing over and over in my head. "Mom, I'm about to have to take care of the man who killed you." And right after that, "You're horrible, Sarah. He's dying, you know?" My hands clenched the sheets. My nails dug into my palms, stinging. At least I could still feel pain. At least I could still feel something. I got up, pulled on some jeans, threw on a sweater. As I passed my desk, I looked at Mom's picture again. Mom died 5 months ago. Stroke. The doctor said high blood pressure, constant stress, 25 years living with an abusive alcoholic, 25 years of beatings, of yelling, of being choked until her face turned purple. I remember once, when I was 8, hiding in the closet, watching through the crack as Dad choked Mom until she couldn't breathe. I was crying, but Mom had told me, "Don't cry, honey. Be quiet. Don't come out." Her hand was over my mouth, and she was turning purple under his hands. I looked away from the picture. I couldn't think about that stuff right now. The streets of Ohio at 3 in the morning were totally empty. I drove through familiar roads, past the neighborhood where I grew up, past the old house where my parents used to live. Now my dad lived there alone. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The yellow streetlights cast shadows on my windshield. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles were white. And then, like an old tape playing, the memories just came flooding back. Dad drunk, smashing things. The TV shattered. The dinner table flipped over. Mom grabbing me, running to the bedroom, locking the door. Dad pounding on the door, screaming, cursing. Mom covering my ears, trying to sing me to sleep with a shaky voice. The time Dad choked Mom. She couldn't scream, just made these choking sounds. Her eyes were rolling back, her face turning purple. I ran out, pounded on his legs, scratched him, crying. He shoved me away, then let go of Mom and went back to drinking. Mom lay on the floor, coughing, holding her neck. And when she saw me crying, she still said, "It's okay, baby. I'm okay." The last time I saw Dad at the hospital, when Mom was there after her stroke, Dad stood in the hallway, wouldn't go in. He just stood there, his hands shaking, his face shaved clean, dressed nicer than usual. I walked right past him without a word. He didn't say anything either, just looked at me, his eyes all red. Mom died 3 days later. At the funeral, he stood in a corner, away from everyone. I looked at him, and I just saw this old, thin man with a blank face. He didn't cry. I didn't cry either. I don't know what he was thinking, and I didn't want to know. I hit the gas harder. The car sped down the empty road. I wanted to outrun those memories. But they followed me, sitting right there in the passenger seat, looking at me with Mom's face, with Dad's face, with everything I'd tried to bury for the last 5 months. St. Mary's Hospital was all lit up. I walked into the ER, that smell of alcohol and disinfectant hitting my nose. A nurse led me down a long hallway, past all those white rooms, past the steady beeping of machine. Room 204, the nurse said. He's awake. I stood in front of the door. It was gray, slightly open. I could see a corner of the hospital bed through the crack, some tubes and wires, an IV bag. My hand touched the doorknob. It was ice cold. I pushed the door open. Robert was lying there. He was so thin I almost didn't recognize him. His face was gray and hollow, his cheeks sunken in. He had an oxygen tube in his nose and IV in his arm, his chest rising and falling weakly with each breath. His hair was completely white, flat against the pillow. His eyes were open. He was looking at me. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. A weak smile, barely there. But I saw it. I saw that smile. And I just stood there, about 6 feet from his bed, not moving any closer. "Sarah," he said, his voice raspy and weak. I didn't answer. A doctor came in, a middle-aged guy with thick glasses holding a chart. He looked at me, then at Robert, then said to me in a gentle voice, "Miss Collins, I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Your father has terminal lung cancer. It's spread to his bones and liver. We'll do everything we can to manage his pain, but in terms of treatment, we can only try to prolong his time. We can't cure it. He has about 3 to 6 months, depending on how he responds." 3 to 6 months. I nodded, didn't say anything. The doctor hesitated, looking at me, then at Robert. "He's awake and wants to talk to you privately. I'll leave you two alone." He walked out, closing the door. It was just me and Robert in the room. The ventilator whooshed. The machines beeped steadily. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I looked back at him, and I saw his hand lying on the bed, thin and shaky. That hand. The hand that choked my mom. "Sarah," he said, his voice raspy. "I'm sorry." I was silent. I know you hate me. I don't blame you." His voice caught, but no tears came. His eyes were just red and watery. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." He stopped, breathing hard. His chest was heaving. I still stood there, 6 feet away, not moving forward or back. In my head, just one sentence, over and over like a curse. "Mom died because of you. Mom died because of you. Mom died because of you." But I didn't say it. He lifted his hand weakly, reaching toward me. That thin, shaky hand reaching out, those bony fingers, nails yellowed from sickness. He wanted to hold my hand. I looked at that hand, and I saw it. That hand, choking my mom, grabbing her hair and dragging her across the floor on, throwing a bottle at her head, punching her face. I stepped back. His hand grabbed at the air for a second, then slowly lowered. "I'm here," I said. My voice was cold, so cold it didn't even sound like me. I turned around and walked to the door. Each step felt heavy, like it was dragging all 25 years of memories with it. My hand touched the doorknob. "I didn't kill your mom." His voice was small, weak, like a whisper from the end of the bed. "I know you think I did, but I didn't kill your mom. Your mom died from her heart." I stopped. My heart pounded. My hand still gripped the doorknob. I could turn around. I could ask him, "What do you mean?" I could look in his eyes and see if he was telling the truth, but I didn't turn around. I opened the door, walked out, and closed it behind me. The hospital hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights pale and sickly. I stood there, leaning against the wall, closing my eyes. His words echoed in my ears. "Your mom died from her heart." I opened my eyes. Mom's picture flashed in my mind, her gentle smile, her sad eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered. "I don't know what to do anymore." I walked away, leaving behind the white room, leaving behind the dying old man with his hand reaching out uselessly, and leaving behind those words, cutting into my heart like a piece of broken glass. Chapter 2, Duty and Feelings. The next morning, the phone rang again. I was sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen for 2 hours without drawing a single line. My coffee had been cold for a while. When the phone rang, I jumped, almost knocking over the cup. It's the hospital again, I thought, and I was right. "This is Sarah Collins," I said, my voice scratchy from not drinking anything. "Oh, hello, ma'am. I'm a nurse from St. Mary's calling about Robert Collins. He's stable now and should be discharged in the next couple of days. However, he'll need someone to care for him at home. Will you be able to pick him up and take him in?" I was silent. I looked out the window. Outside, a bird sat on a dead branch, tilting its head, looking in at me. I looked at it, it looked at me, and then it flew away. "Hello, Ms. Collins?" "Yeah, I'm here." "What I mean is, he's going to need regular care. If you can't take him in, we can recommend some nursing homes or home care services. But he only asks about you. He wants to come home with you. Wants to come home with me." I closed my eyes. In my head, 100 voices argued. One said, "Don't bring him home. He doesn't deserve it." Another said, "But he's your dad." Another said, "Do you know what the neighbors will say if you abandon your dying old father?" Another said, "Who cares what they say? They don't know what he did to your mom." I opened my eyes. The bird was gone. "Miss Collins?" "Yeah." "What have you decided?" I looked at Mom's picture on my desk. She was smiling. She's always smiling in pictures. But I remember her crying more. I remember her sitting in the corner of the room, holding her knees, sobbing after every beating. I remember her saying, "When you grow up, don't marry a man like your father." And now I was about to bring him home. "I'll pick him up," I said. My voice was so soft I wasn't sure I'd actually said it. But the nurse heard. "Okay, ma'am. Let me tell you what you'll need to prepare." I nodded, even though I knew she couldn't see me. She talked about hospital beds, about medications, about diet. I listened, but didn't really understand any of it. My mind was spinning, just one question repeating, "What am I doing?" When I hung up, I sat there for another 10 minutes. Then I stood up and went into the living room. My apartment is small. 1 bedroom, 1 living room, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom. I looked around, trying to find a spot for an extra bed. The corner by the window? No, too much sun, he needs to rest. Near the kitchen? No, that would be awkward. Finally, my eyes stopped at the wall across from the TV. That spot would be just right. I drove to the medical supply store. The hospital bed was white, with rails on the sides, and you could crank the head up and down. I stood looking at it, touching the cold metal bars. The salesman asked if I wanted to buy it. I nodded, not saying anything. Then a little bedside table, so he could eat without having to sit up. Then a bedpan, then a pressure sore pad, then pillows, then medications. I carried each thing out to my car, my hands shaking. When I was putting the bedpan in the trunk, I stared at it. This plain white plastic thing, but it represented something horrible. It represented weakness, old age, death getting closer. And it would be used by the man who was once strong enough to choke my mom. I slammed the trunk shut. When I got home, I started cleaning. That corner used to hold my potted plants. I carried them out to the balcony. A couple had dropped leaves, probably wouldn't survive. I mopped the floor, wiped the wall, moved the sofa out of the way. Then I set up the bed. The hospital bed was heavier than I expected. I followed the instructions as I assembled it, sweat running down my back. When I was screwing in a bolt, I turned it too hard and stripped it. I sat down on the floor, watching the bolt roll away and stop under the cabinet. I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, my hands shaking. What am I doing? That question just kept repeating. I looked around the room. This place was mine. It was where I came home after exhausting days at work. It was where I cried alone when I missed Mom. It was where I was safe. Soon, this place would have another person, a dying man. A man who made my mom's life miserable for 25 years. I picked up the bolt and kept working. That night, I sat on the sofa, staring at the empty white bed in the corner. It sat there, waiting, like a reminder that life was about to change forever. The phone rang. I looked at the screen. Mike, my ex-boyfriend. 2 years ago, we broke up because he couldn't handle it anymore. Couldn't handle the nights I'd wake up screaming from nightmares. Couldn't handle me curling up in a ball whenever someone yelled. He said, "I love you, but I don't know how to help you. I'm exhausted." I didn't blame him. I was exhausted too. "Hello," I said. "Sarah, it's me. Long time no talk. You okay?" His voice was the same, warm and gentle. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back on the sofa. "I'm fine," I said, lying to myself. "I heard about your dad. I'm sorry." I opened my eyes. "Who told you?" "My buddy, who works at the hospital. He saw your name in the records. He asked if I knew you. I said yes." I didn't say anything. "Sarah, what are you going to do?" I looked at the white bed. "I'm picking him up, taking care of him." Mike was quiet for a moment. Then he said, softly but clearly, "Why don't you put him in a nursing home? You don't owe anything to the man who made your mom's life miserable." I sat up straight. That sentence. I had never thought about it. Never. Ever since I was born, I was taught. When parents get old, kids take care of them. It's your duty. It's what's right. Abandoning your parents is the worst sin. But Mike said, "You don't owe anything." "I know what you're thinking," Mike continued. "You think people will talk. You think you'll be guilty. But Sarah, you have a choice. You have the right to protect yourself. What he did to your mom, to you, it wasn't nothing. You don't owe him anything." I was silent. "Sarah? I'm listening. I just want you to know, whatever you decide, I support you. But don't do something just because you feel pressured by other people. Do it because you really want to." I looked at Mom's picture. She was still smiling. I don't even know what I want anymore," I whispered. Mike sighed. "I know. I just wanted to tell you that. Think about it, okay? Need me to come over and help with anything? No, I'm okay, thanks. All right, take care of yourself. I hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Mike said. You have a choice. You have the right to protect yourself. I'd never thought I had that right. I grew up just enduring things, being quiet, doing my duty. My mom endured for 25 years, and I learned to endure from her. But Mike said I have a choice. I turned over in bed. I have a choice. I have the right to say no. I have the right to protect myself from that man, even if he's dying. I looked out the window. The moon was bright. But if you choose not to take him in, can you live with that decision? I didn't know. All I knew was that tomorrow morning I had to go to the hospital. The next morning, the sky was bright blue. I drove to the hospital, parked, and went to the admissions desk. The discharge paperwork took almost 2 hours. When everything was done, a nurse pushed Robert out the front door in a wheelchair. He was in the wheelchair wearing new clothes I'd bought in a hurry that morning. A light gray shirt, black pants. He looked even thinner than I thought, slumped in the wheelchair like he might slide right off. His hands rested on his lap, trembling slightly. He looked at me and didn't say anything. I pushed the wheelchair out the gate. The sun hit my face. I squinted, looking up at the bright blue sky with not a single cloud. It was so beautiful. So beautiful it felt wrong. Why was the sky so beautiful on a day like this? Why wasn't it gray and stormy and miserable like I felt inside? The wheelchair wheels crunched on the gravel, a small, steady sound, like the slow heartbeat of something dying. I looked up at the sky again. Mom, can you see me? Are you mad at me? No answer. Just the crunching of the wheels and the bright blue sky above. Chapter 3, The First Days. I pushed the wheelchair through the doorway into my small apartment. Robert sat there, his hands shaking on his lap, his eyes looking around, looking at the cream-colored walls, at the potted plants on the balcony, at Mom's picture on my desk. His eyes stopped at the picture longer than anywhere else. I saw his lips move slightly, but he didn't say anything. This is where you'll stay, I said, pointing to the corner of the living room. The white hospital bed was made up with clean sheets. Beside it was a little table with a water bottle, a glass, and a red call bell. I pushed the wheelchair closer. Can you get into bed by yourself? Robert nodded. He put his hands on the bed rail, trying to push himself up. But he was too weak. His hands shook violently. His legs wouldn't hold him. He sank back into the wheelchair, breathing hard. I can't, he said, his voice ashamed. I looked at him, looked at his hands gripping the chair, the veins standing out. I sighed, stepped forward, put my arms around his chest, and pulled him up. He was lighter than I expected. Bones against bones, skin stretched over bones, no flesh left. I helped him lie down on the bed, pulled the blanket up to his chest. Thank you, he said, his eyes on me. I didn't answer. I turned and walked into the kitchen. I opened the fridge, looked at the containers of food I'd prepared yesterday. Chicken soup, white rice, steamed fish. I took out a portion, put it in the microwave. When it dinged, I put the food on a tray, added a spoon, chopsticks, and a cup of warm water. I carried the tray to the living room and set it on the table by the bed. Eat. Robert sat up, holding onto the bed rail. He looked at the tray, then at me. His eyes were red. Thank you, he said again. I stood there for a few seconds, then turned and went into my bedroom. I closed the door, sat on my bed, and hugged my knees. What am I doing? That question just wouldn't leave me alone. That evening, I sat in my room with my laptop open but didn't do anything. I just sat there, listening. Robert's wheezing from the living room, his dry coughing fits, him shifting in bed, the bed creaking. Then around 11 o'clock, I heard moaning. At first, it was quiet, like a whisper. Then it got louder into a painful groan. Sarah! Sarah! I opened my door and ran out. Robert was curled up on the bed, both hands clutching his chest, his face twisted in pain. Sweat dotted his forehead, his hair was plastered to his skin. He was gasping for air. It hurts so bad, he moaned. I ran to the medicine cabinet, got the pain pills the doctor prescribed. Fumbling, I opened the bottle and took out 2 pills. I went back to the bed, lifted his head, put the pills in his mouth, held the water to his lips. Drink. He drank, water spilling from the corner of his mouth, running down his chin. I grabbed a towel to wipe it, and when my hand touched his skin, it was hot, sweaty, and it felt terrifyingly familiar. I remembered the first time I saw him hit Mom. I was 7. He was drunk. Mom said something, and he slapped her. She fell to the floor. He walked over, grabbed her hair, and pulled her up. I looked at his hand, gripping her hair so tight the veins stood out. That hand. The hand I was touching now. I jerked my hand back like I'd been burned. Step back, 1 step, 2 steps. Robert lay there, eyes squeezed shut, still gasping, not knowing what I'd just done. I stood there, my heart pounding. Then I turned, walked quickly to my room, and slammed the door. I leaned against the door, sliding down to sit on the floor. My hands were shaking. I looked at my palms, the hands that had just touched him. I wanted to wash them. I wanted to scrub them under running water for a long time. But I couldn't get up. I just sat there on the cold floor, listening to his wheezing through the door. 2 days passed like that. I did everything like a robot. Cooked, gave him his pills, washed him, changed his sheets. Didn't say anything except what was necessary. Eat. Take your medicine. Lie down. Robert watched me. He wanted to say something, I knew. But I didn't give him a chance. As soon as I was done, I left, not staying an extra second. On the 3rd day, he was more alert. The pain was better, and he could sit up against the bed rail. When I brought his food tray, he didn't eat right away. He looked at me. "Sarah, can you sit here with me for a minute?" I stood still. Then I pulled a chair over and sat down, about 3 feet from the bed. My arms were crossed. Robert looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "I know you hate me, and I don't blame you, but I want you to know something. I loved your mom. Truly." I laughed, a dry, hollow laugh with no humor in it. "Love?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Is that what you call choking someone? Is that what you call beating your wife for 25 years? Robert was silent. His eyes looked away out the window where a few yellow leaves were trembling in the wind. His hands lay on the blanket, trembling. "I can't explain it," he finally said, his voice small. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong." I stood up. Without another word, I picked up the food tray and carried it to the kitchen. I dumped all the food in the trash. My hands were shaking. Love, he dared to say that word. That night I dreamed about Mom. Mom was standing in the kitchen of our old house. That kitchen with the brown wooden cabinets, the old dining table, the microwave that had been broken for years. She was wearing her green sweater, drying dishes. When she saw me, she turned around, her face sad. "What are you doing, Sarah?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but full of blame. "Why are you taking care of him?" I tried to say, "Mom, I don't know what else to do." But my mouth wouldn't move. I just stood there, looking at her. Mom came closer. Her face was sadder than I'd ever seen it. "He made my life miserable for so many years. Have you forgotten?" "I haven't forgotten," I wanted to say. I'll never forget. But Mom had vanished. The kitchen vanished. I stood alone in the dark. I woke up. Sweat covered my forehead, my back. My heart was thumping. I sat up, looking around the room. Darkness. Light from the window filtered in, but not enough to see clearly. Then I heard his wheezing from the living room. Steady, weak, like the heartbeat of something dying. I hugged my knees, leaning against the headboard. Guilt pressed down on my chest, so heavy I could hardly breathe. Guilt for taking care of him? Or guilt that deep down I still wanted him to die and I didn't know? I just knew I sat there in the dark, listening to his breathing, and I couldn't fall back asleep. The next morning, when he was asleep after his pain meds, I went out on the balcony and called Mike. The sun was up, but the air was getting cool. I put on a light sweater, held the phone, looking down at the empty street. "Mike, it's me. Sarah, what's up? You sound tired." "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," I said. My voice was about to cry, but I didn't. My tears had dried up long ago. Mike was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sarah, some things aren't about right or wrong. They're just choices and consequences. You chose to take care of him. Now you have to learn to live with that choice." I was silent. "Do you regret it?" Mike asked. I thought about it. Do I regret it? I didn't know. I just knew that every day felt like walking on a tightrope between two cliffs. On one side, guilt if I abandoned him. On the other side, guilt if I stayed with him. "I don't know," I whispered. Mike sighed. "If you need anything, call me. I'll come over." "Okay, thanks." I hung up. I stood there a little longer, looking down at the street. A yellow leaf fell from a tree, spinning in the wind, then landed on the sidewalk. Fall was coming. I looked at the leaf, then up at the grayish sky. I wondered, will I make it through this winter? Behind me, from the living room, Robert moaned in pain again. A weak moan, but enough to pull me back to reality. I sighed. I turned around, opened the balcony door, and went back inside. I walked past the living room and saw Robert trying to reach for the water glass on his table. His hand kept reaching, but couldn't quite get it. I stopped. Then I walked over, picked up the glass, and handed it to him. He looked at me, his eyes red. "Thank you," he said. I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching him take small sips, his hand shaking, water spilling from the corner of his mouth. And I asked myself, well, what am I doing? But the answer still wouldn't come. Chapter 4, Fridays. 3 weeks went by. I stopped counting the days. Every day was exactly the same as the one before. Like an endless loop I couldn't escape. Wake up at 6 a.m., go to the living room, check on Robert, wash his face with a warm towel, help him sit up, give him his medicine, bring breakfast, wait for him to finish, clean up. At 9 a.m., give him a bath. Wipe him down, change his clothes, change the bandages on the bed sores on his back. At 11 a.m., lunch. 1 p.m., medicine. 3 p.m., change bandages again. 6 p.m., dinner. 9 p.m., medicine. 10 p.m., put the bedpan next to his bed, turn off the light. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I did everything like a machine. No thinking, no feeling, just doing. My hands would lift him up, lay him down, clean him, feed him spoonfuls of porridge, give him his pills. My eyes looked at him, but I didn't really see him. I saw a job, a responsibility, a burden that needed handling. Every time I looked at him, I felt this distance. The space between his bed and my room was only a few feet, but it felt like he was in a whole different world. A world I didn't want to enter. I did my work, then I went to my room and closed the door. That was the line. That was how I kept myself from going crazy. But sometimes late at night, I'd lie there listening to his wheezing through the door, and I'd wonder, how much longer can I keep doing this? On the first Friday of the second month, I decided to take a break. I called a home health care service. 4 hours from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. It was expensive, but I didn't care. A nurse is coming at 5, I told Robert while I was feeding him lunch. I'm going out for a few hours. Robert looked at me. He didn't ask where, just nodded. At 5 to 5, the nurse arrived. Her name was Maria. She was from the Philippines, spoke softly with a gentle smile. I showed her everything. Where the medicine was, where the towels were, the emergency number. She nodded and told me not to worry. I stood at the door, looking back one more time. Robert was in bed, watching me. Maria sat beside him, unpacking her bag. Then I stepped outside and closed the door. The streets were busier than I remembered. I walked a few blocks to a little coffee shop on the corner. I used to come here before Mom died, before everything got turned upside down. The wooden sign was still the same. The potted plants out front were still the same. Only I was different. I ordered a latte and sat at a table on the sidewalk. The sun was setting. It was a deep red behind the buildings, painting the whole street orange. People were leaving work, cars going by, honking, laughing. All the normal stuff I'd forgotten about for so long. I sat there, holding my warm coffee, watching people pass. A mom pushing a stroller, her baby fast asleep. 2 guys on bikes, laughing and joking around. An old man walking his dog, the little dog running around all excited. For the first time in days, I felt like a human being again. Not a caregiver, not the daughter of a dying man, just Sarah, a 25-year-old girl having coffee on a Friday evening. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The air smelled like exhaust, like fresh bread from the shop next door, like flowers from the nearby plants, the smell of life. Sarah? I opened my eyes. A girl was standing in front of me. Ponytail, gray sweater, black glasses. She was staring at me, eyes wide. Sarah Collins, is that you? I blinked, then I recognized her. Jenny Trung? She broke into a huge smile and threw her arms around me. Oh my God, it's been forever. I thought you fell off the face of the earth. Jenny Trung, my college roommate. We lived together for 2 years before she moved to New York for an internship. We lost touch after that. Sit down, I said, pulling out a chair. What are you drinking? My treat. She ordered an Americano and sat across from me. I'm back in town visiting for a few days. Was just walking around and saw you sitting here. I almost didn't recognize you. You've lost so much weight. I gave a weak smile. I've got a lot going on. Jenny looked at me for a minute, her eyes softening. She was always the observant one. You okay? Talk to me. And for some reason I did. I told her about Mom dying 5 months ago, about my dad, about the middle of the night phone call, about the days of caregiving, the hospital bed in my living room, the pain, the guilt weighing me down every night. I told her everything, like a flood I couldn't stop. Jenny listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened, nodding every now and then. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, My mom died last year too, cancer. I looked at her. I took care of her in her final days. Jenny continued, her voice soft. 3 months. 3 months I stayed in the hospital, sleeping on a chair, eating takeout, watching her waste away, watching her suffer. When she finally passed, I thought I'd feel relieved, but I didn't. I just felt empty. She was spinning her coffee cup in her hands. I know how you feel, she said. That feeling of wanting to do your duty, but also wanting to run away. Love and hate all mixed together, wanting them to live, but also wanting them to die so you can be free. I looked at her. My eyes were burning. I thought I was going crazy, I whispered. Jenny shook her head. No, you're just human. We sat there for hours talking about everything. College memories, old friends, Jenny's job in New York. My plans, I said I didn't have any, just taking it day by day. When I looked at my watch, it was 8 p.m. I have to go, I said, even though I didn't want to. Jenny nodded. Yeah, I get it. But hey, give me your number, okay? Let's stay in touch. We exchanged numbers. When we stood up, Jenny hugged me tight. Take care of yourself, she whispered in my ear. Don't forget you matter too. I nodded, not able to say anything. I got home at 9 p.m. I paid Maria, thanked her. She said Robert was good, took his medicine on time, didn't cause any trouble. I nodded and walked her to the door. When I went into the living room, Robert was awake. He was lying in bed looking at me. Where'd you go? He asked. Out, I said shortly. I started tidying up the things Maria had left, not looking at him. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm glad you have your own life. Don't let me hold you back. I froze. I was holding a towel. My hand stopped in midair. I turned and looked at him. He lay there, thin and pale, his eyes wide open looking at me. He didn't seem like he was faking it. I'm not letting you hold me back, I said, my voice awkward. He nodded slightly. Okay, I just wanted you to know that. I stood there for a few more seconds, then turned away and kept cleaning, but my hands were shaking. That night I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Robert's words kept running through my head. Don't let me hold you back. I stared at the white ceiling, at the familiar crack, and I suddenly realized something. For 25 years, he'd been holding me back without even knowing it. Nights I couldn't sleep because of the yelling. Mornings I went to school with swollen eyes from crying. Times my friends asked, well, why is your face bruised? And I had to make up excuses. Years of living in fear, never knowing when he'd come home, when he'd be drunk, when he'd lose it again. He held back my childhood, held back the best years of my mom's life, held back everything. But now when he was dying, I was letting him right back into my life. So messed up, I turned over, looking out the window. The moon wasn't bright tonight, just a dim glow behind the clouds. Wind blew, making the curtains move. Mom, I whispered into the dark, what should I do? No answer. Just the wind outside the window and from the living room, his wheezing drifting through the door like a steady, endless rhythm. Chapter 5, Pieces of Memory. I couldn't just sit still anymore. My little apartment was starting to feel suffocating. Not because of the air, but because of all the stuff packed in the closet corners and the drawers and dusty boxes I'd been avoiding for years. Today I decided to clean. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed something to do to keep from losing my mind. I started in my bedroom. Opened the closet, pulled everything out, folded the stuff I could still wear, bagged up the old stuff. Then I saw the cardboard box in the very bottom corner, covered in dust. I pulled it out, opened it. Old photos. Dozens of them, yellowed, edges slightly curled. I sat on the floor and started flipping through them. Mom when she was young. She was wearing a white dress, standing on the porch, long hair down to her shoulders, smiling. She was so beautiful. I'd never seen her smile like that in my memories. Next one, wedding photo. Mom in her wedding dress, Robert in a black suit, standing in front of the altar, holding hands, faces glowing. He was so young, hair still thick, eyes bright, nothing like the alcoholic he'd become. Then a family photo. I was about 5. Pink dress, hair in pigtails, sitting on the steps. Mom on my left, Robert on my right, all three looking at the camera. I was smiling big, showing my gap-toothed smile. Mom smiling gently. Robert smiling too, his arm around my shoulder. I stared at that photo. My dad was holding me. His face was kind, his eyes looking at me with love. Nothing like the abuser in my memories. I turned the photo over. On the back, in messy blue ink, Sarah, age 5, Park, June, 2006. I closed my eyes. And then, like an old movie, the memories started coming back. When I was little, there were days he didn't drink. On those days, he was a different father. I remember him taking me to the park once. I was 5 or 6. He bought me an ice cream cone, the kind with 2 flavors, chocolate and strawberry. I dropped some on my shirt, and he laughed, pulling out a handkerchief to wipe it off. Then he pushed me on the swing. I sat there, laughing, yelling, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" He pushed me high, and I could see the whole sky in front of me. I remember him teaching me to draw. He wasn't good at it, but he tried to draw a cat for me. The cat he drew was terrible, looked more like a mouse. But I still said, "That's so good, Daddy." He laughed and ruffled my hair. I remember him reading me bedtime stories. His voice was warm and deep, reading slowly, sometimes asking, "Are you scared?" "Don't be scared, Daddy's right here." But then, when I was 8 or 9, things started to change. He lost his job. He was home more. He started drinking more. The days he didn't drink became rare. Then they disappeared completely. Instead, there were days he was drunk, days he'd lose it, days Mom cried, days I hid in the closet. I opened my eyes, looking at the photo again. My dad in this photo. Where did he go? When did he disappear? And who was that person wearing his face all those years after? I put the photo back in the box and closed the lid. That afternoon, I sat by Robert's bed. He was awake, looking out the window at the yellow leaves falling. I sat there for a long time, not saying anything. Then I asked, "Why did you start drinking?" Robert turned to look at me. His eyes were surprised, like he couldn't believe I'd asked that. He was quiet for so long, I thought he wasn't going to answer. But then he did. 'Cause I couldn't handle the pressure. His voice was raspy and slow, like each word took effort to get out. I lost my job, couldn't provide for my family. I was ashamed. Alcohol. Alcohol made me forget that shame. But then it turned me into a monster. He looked at me, eyes red. I know what I did to your mom. To you, I can't make excuses." I was quiet, my hands gripped the chair. "But why didn't you stop?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. "Why didn't you quit?" Robert looked out the window again. The afternoon light hit his face, lighting it up for a moment. "I tried on," he said, "many times." He stopped, coughed a few times. I waited. "But every time I'd stay sober for a few days, I'd see the disappointment in your mom's eyes. In yours, I couldn't handle it." He turned back to me. His eyes were watery. "You know, when you looked at me with those eyes, I felt like a complete failure. Not just unemployed, not just unable to support my family, but a bad father, a bad husband. I couldn't face that truth." His voice cracked. Alcohol was the only way I didn't have to face the fact that I'd failed. Failed as a father, failed as a husband, failed as a human being. I sat still. In my head, a mess of feelings tangled together. Anger, pity, disgust, understanding, all mixed up, impossible to untangle. I couldn't sympathize. I couldn't say, "I understand, it's okay," because it wasn't okay. Not at all. My mom paid for it with 25 years of tears. I paid for it with a childhood I could never get back. But I was starting to understand. Not to forgive, but to understand that people are more complicated than I thought. No one is completely bad. No one is completely good. There are broken pieces inside everyone, and sometimes those pieces cut into each other, hurting each other, even when no one means to. I looked at him. He lay there, thin, weak, dying. A person about to die, carrying all his mistakes, all his regrets, all the broken pieces of his life. I didn't say anything. I just sat there next to him until the sun set completely and darkness started filling the room. That night, I went out on the balcony and called Mike. The night was colder. I put on a thick sweater, held my phone, looking up at the starry sky. In Ohio, some nights, the sky is so clear you can see every constellation. "Mike, it's me, It's me. Sarah, it's late, you okay?" "I'm okay, I just wanted to talk." "Yeah, I'm listening." I was quiet for a moment, organizing my thoughts. I think I'm starting to understand my dad a little more. Mike didn't ask, "Understand what?" He just waited. "I found old photos today," I continued. "Saw my dad when he was young, before he started drinking. Then I asked him why he started. He said, because he was ashamed. Because he lost his job, couldn't provide for his family. Because he couldn't handle the disappointment in me and my mom's eyes." "And?" Mike asked softly. "And I can't sympathize," I said. "I can't. But I'm starting to understand. Understand that he wasn't born a monster. He became one because of things he couldn't control." Mike was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Does that make you less angry?" I thought about that question. I looked up at the sky, at the distant, cold stars. "No," I answered. "It doesn't make me less angry, but it makes me less confused." "Confused?" "Yeah, I used to think he was just bad. Simple as that. A bad person, someone to hate. But now, I see he's more complicated. Not so I can forgive him. Just so I can understand that life isn't as simple as I thought." Mike sighed. "Sarah, you're growing up." I gave a weak laugh. "Growing up or going crazy? I don't know anymore." "You're not crazy," Mike said. "You're just seeing the truth. The truth is everybody has a dark side. Some people let it swallow them. Some people fight it. Your dad, he let it swallow him. But that doesn't mean he was never a good person. I was quiet. You tired? Mike asked. So tired. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's another day. Yeah. Hey, Sarah. What? I'm proud of you. Whatever you decide, I'm proud. I couldn't say anything. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see. Then I hung up. I stood on the balcony for a long time after. The wind blew, my hair flying. The stars above were still cold and distant. In the living room, Robert coughed again, a weak, raspy cough, drifting through the glass door. I looked inside, saw his shadow on the bed dim in the nightlight. And I wondered, between the person in that old photo and the person in that bed today, who was really my father? I didn't know the answer, but maybe they were both him. Chapter 6, The Strange Woman. Tuesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I was giving Robert a sponge bath. The shrill ringing cut through the quiet. I wiped my hands on a towel, told Robert to wait a minute, and went to open the door. A woman was standing there. She was around 50, 55, short salt and pepper hair, brown wool coat, black dress pants. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was staring at me intently. Are you Sarah? She asked. Her voice was a little shaky. I nodded, looking at her carefully. Yes, who are you? I'm Margaret, she said. Robert's sister, your aunt. I froze. Robert's sister? Mom never mentioned an aunt. In 25 years, I never knew I had an aunt. Mom never talked about Dad's family. When I asked, she'd just say, your dad doesn't have any family, just him. And now this woman was standing in front of me, eyes red, holding a bag of fruit. I'm sorry to just show up like this, Margaret said. I just found out my brother was sick. I flew in from California. Can I see him, please? I stood there, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part was curious, but finally I stepped aside and let her in. Please, come in. Margaret walked into the living room. Her eyes looked around the small apartment, stopping at the hospital bed in the corner, at Robert lying there. Robert was awake, looking toward the door. When he saw Margaret, his eyes got wide. Marg, and he whispered, Marg, is that you? Margaret hurried over and sat down next to the bed. She grabbed Robert's hand, her hands shaking. Robert, it's this, Robert, it's me, I'm here. And then they hugged each other and cried. I stood at the door watching, a brother and sister who probably hadn't seen each other in a long time, hugging and crying like little kids. Robert was sobbing, trying to say something, but not getting the words out. Margaret patted his back, whispering, It's okay, I'm here now. I stood there, feeling like an outsider in my own family. I didn't know anything about them. Didn't know how long they'd been apart. Didn't know why they were apart. Didn't know why Mom never mentioned this aunt. I just stood there watching and feeling completely lost. A little while later, Robert fell asleep. The pain meds made him tired. Margaret wiped her tears, pulled the blanket back over him, and stood up. Can we go outside and talk for a minute? She asked softly. I nodded. We went out to the balcony. Outside, it was a cool fall afternoon. Yellow leaves covered the sidewalk. Margaret leaned against the railing, looking down at the street. I stood next to her, waiting. I know you must have a lot of questions, Margaret started. Why I never showed up. Why your mom never mentioned me. I was quiet. Margaret sighed. Your mom and I didn't get along. She didn't want me to see you. But I've always kept an eye on you from afar. I looked at her. Kept an eye on me? Yeah, I know you were a good student. I know you went to college. I know you're a graphic designer. I have a friend who lives in Ohio. She'd give me updates every now and then. I didn't know how to feel. Warm or scared. A stranger watching me all these years. Why? I asked, my voice dry. Margaret was quiet for a long time. She stared into the distance, at the gray clouds moving slowly. Then she said, Because I knew something about your dad that your mom didn't want you to know. My heart pounded. What? Margaret turned to look at me. Her eyes were sad. Sit down, this is a long story. We sat on the two small chairs on the balcony. Wind blew, my hair flying. I crossed my arms over my chest like I was protecting myself from what I was about to hear. Your dad wasn't always an alcoholic, Margaret said. He started drinking after he lost his job and found out your mom was seeing someone else. I was stunned. What? Your mom had another man, Margaret said slowly. His name was David. It went on for almost a year before your dad found out. I shook my head. No, my mom wouldn't. You think I'm lying? Margaret's voice was soft, not accusing. I get it. I understand you don't want to believe it. But it's the truth. I sat there, my mind spinning. Your dad loved your mom so much, Margaret continued. He loved her since high school. When he found out, he completely fell apart. Lost his job, wife cheating. He had nothing to hold on to, so he turned to alcohol. My hands clenched, my nails dug into my palms. Your mom wasn't the perfect victim you think she was, Margaret said, her voice sad. She made mistakes too, but that doesn't excuse him hitting her. I'm not saying that, I just want you to understand. Things are more complicated than you think. I looked up at her. Why are you telling me this now? Margaret looked at me, her eyes red. Because I don't want you to live in hate. Because I know my brother is dying, and you deserve to know the truth before he's gone. Because I love him, and I love you too, even though we've never met. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. In my head, a mess of feelings tangled together. Mad at mom, mad at dad, mad at this strange aunt, or mad at myself for not knowing anything. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Are you okay? Margaret asked. I shook my head, and I don't know. That night, after Margaret went back to her hotel, I sat alone in my room. I looked at Mom's picture on my desk. She was smiling gently, her eyes soft. The mom I loved, the mom I felt sorry for, the mom I thought was the perfect victim. She had an affair. She had another man. She made my dad fall apart. I held my head, closing my eyes. Memories flooded back. The times Dad was drunk, smashing things. The times Dad hit Mom. The times Mom held me and cried. I always took Mom's side. I always thought she was innocent. Dad was the bad guy. But now, I opened my eyes looking at the picture again. Mom was still smiling. But did that smile mean something different now? I didn't know. Part of me, the part that lived with Mom for 20 years, the part that saw her cry, heard her stories about the beatings, comforted her during sleepless nights, that part didn't want to believe this. But another part, the part that just heard Margaret's story, the part that saw Dad cry when he saw his sister, the part that was starting to understand people are more complicated than I thought, that part knew this could be the truth. I stood up and walked to the living room. Robert was sleeping. The dim nightlight cast a yellow glow on his thin, pale face. He breathed steadily, occasionally letting out a small moan. I sat in the chair next to his bed and looked at him. How many things don't I know about you and Mom? I whispered. He didn't answer. He slept, not knowing what was going on in my head. I looked at his hand lying on the blanket. Thin, shaking even in sleep. The hand that hit my mom. The hand that choked my mom. But also the hand that held me, bought me ice cream, pushed me on the swing. I reached out and lightly touched the back of his hand. His skin was cold, dry, bony. Dad, I whispered, I don't know what to think anymore. He didn't move. I sat there a long time in the dark, listening to him breathe, and wondering about the missing pieces of my family's story. The question kept repeating in my head, but no answer came. Chapter 7, Anger and Truth. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's face, heard Margaret's voice. Your mom had another man. I tossed and turned, threw off the blanket, then pulled it back, turned the light on, then off. At 5 a.m., I gave up. I sat up, looked out the window, waited for the sun to rise. When it did, I got up and walked to the living room. Robert was awake. He was lying there, eyes open, looking toward the window. When he saw me, he turned and started to smile. But then he saw my face, and the smile disappeared. I pulled a chair close to his bed. We were only inches apart, but it felt like an ocean between us. I looked at him. He looked at me, waiting. Did Mom have an affair? The question flew out of my mouth like a rock. No lead-in, no explanation, just straight like that. Robert froze. His eyes got wide, then slowly looked away. He stared out the window, where the first rays of sun were creeping through the glass. He was quiet for a long time. So long, I thought he wasn't going to answer. But then he nodded. A small nod, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Yes, my hands clenched. I'd prepared myself for this answer, but when I heard it, it still felt like someone punched me in the chest. But I don't blame her, Robert continued, his voice raspy. I understand why she did it. I looked at him, not believing my ears. You don't blame her? No. I stood up fast. Blood rushed to my head, hot and burning. Why didn't you tell me? I was almost yelling. Why did you let me think badly of Mom all these years? Why did you let me think Mom was the perfect victim and you were the only bad guy? Robert looked at me, his eyes red. Because I didn't want you to hate your mom, he said, his voice shaking. Whatever she did, she was still your mother. I wanted you to have a good memory of her. I stood there, shaking with anger. You think I have a good memory of her? I've been suffering because of her. I have been torn apart, feeling sorry for her. I've been hating you for what you did to her. And now I find out she messed up too. I don't know what to think anymore. I was screaming so loud my voice cracked. Tears started streaming down my face, salty on my lips. Robert reached out his hand like he wanted to hold mine. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." He pulled his hand back, his face full of pain, but not the pain from being sick, pain from me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I just wanted to protect you." Protect me by letting me live in lies? I turned away, took a few steps, then turned back. I didn't know what to do. Anger, sadness, and confusion, all tangled up in a knot in my chest. "Tell me," I said, my voice quieter now. "Tell me everything." Robert closed his eyes for a moment, like he was gathering strength. Then he opened them and looked at me. "I hit your mom when I was drunk," he began. "You know that, but did you know sometimes your mom hit me first?" I was stunned. "Mom hit you?" Robert nodded. "She had her own temper. When I drank, when I lost my job, when I couldn't provide for the family, she'd lose it. She'd throw things at me. She'd punch, kick, scratch, and I'd fight back, but when I was drunk, I'd fight back harder." He paused, swallowing with difficulty. "I'm not saying that to make excuses. Nothing excuses me hitting her. I just want you to understand, we hurt each other in different ways. I don't know who was right or wrong anymore. I just know we were both wrong." I dropped into the chair. My head was spinning. Mom hit Dad too? Mom had her own temper? The image of my gentle, suffering victim mother in my mind started to crack. "But Mom was always the one who got hurt," I whispered, like I was talking to myself. "She always cried. She always hid with me in the room." "Because when I was drunk, I was the more violent one," Robert said. "She was scared. She had to protect you. But when I was sober, when I wasn't drinking, she was different. She could be very cold." He looked at me, his eyes full of tears. "I loved your mom. I loved her since high school, but love wasn't enough to save us when we both had our own wounds." I sat there, not saying anything. Tears still flowed, but I wasn't ashamed of them anymore. Robert reached out his hand again, slowly this time, like he was giving me time to back away if I wanted. I didn't. He took my hand. His hand was cold, shaking, bony. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from all that bad stuff. I'm sorry you grew up in a broken family. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I love you, whether you believe it or not." I looked at him, looked at his hollow face, his red-rimmed eyes, his shaking hand holding mine. This man, no matter how many wrong things he'd done and no matter how much pain he'd caused right now, he was just a dying father, asking for his daughter's love. I didn't know what to say. Inside me, a storm of feelings, anger, love, hate, forgiveness. Not forgiveness, all spinning with no way out. Then I pulled my hand away. Not because I was angry, but because I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to get out. I needed to be alone. I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and closed the door. I slid down to the floor, my back against the cold door, and I cried. I sobbed like I'd never sobbed before. Tears soaked my face, my shirt, the floor. I cried for Mom, for Dad, for myself. I cried for the childhood that was stolen. I cried for the lies, the wounds, the broken pieces that could never be fixed. I don't know how long I cried. All I know is when the tears stopped, I heard a sound from the living room. A sob, weak but clear. I listened, that sob, crying. Robert was crying. He was crying quietly, not calling for me, not complaining, just crying alone in his sickbed. I could picture it. Him lying there, tears running down his thin face, one hand on his chest, hurting not just from sickness, but from a broken heart. I didn't open the door. I sat there, my back against the door, listening to his crying through the thin wood. Father and daughter. 2 rooms, 1 pane. Outside, his crying got softer, then stopped. Maybe he fell asleep. Maybe he ran out of tears. Inside my room, I closed my eyes, leaned my head against the door, and whispered, "Mommy, what do I do now?" No answer. Just the wind through the window crack, and the cool fall air starting to seep in. Chapter 8, the final days. November came, bringing cold rains and gray skies. Robert got weaker. Every day he ate less, talked less, woke less. Some days he'd sleep for 20 hours straight, only waking up for medicine and a few spoonfuls of thin soup. His skin got grayer, his eyes sunk deeper, his breathing got more labored. The doctor came by on the weekend. He listened to his lungs, took his pulse, then pulled me out into the hallway. "Sarah, I'm sorry. He only has a few weeks left, maybe less." I nodded. I already knew. Anyone living with a dying person knows when death is close. You can see it in every weak breath, in every fading look, in every longer silence between words. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I looked at all the work emails piling up, the projects I'd left half finished. Then I shut it down. I sent an email to all my clients. I'm sorry, family emergency. I'll be taking time off indefinitely. Not because it was my duty, not because I felt sorry for him, but because I realized this was my last chance to be with him. After he was gone, I'd have my whole life to work, to make money, to live. But I'd never have another chance to sit by him, to watch him sleep, to hear him tell old stories. So I stayed. Those days, our little apartment was strangely quiet. I read books to him. He liked history books, especially about World War II. I got some from the library and sat by his bed reading out loud. My voice filled the empty room, telling stories about battles, generals, people's lives. He lay there with his eyes closed, but I knew he wasn't sleeping. Sometimes he'd nod or move his lips like he wanted to say something. Sometimes he'd open his eyes, look at me for a long time, then close them again. I even read books he didn't like, just to have a voice in the room. Novels, poetry, magazines. One day I read him an article about climate change. He didn't understand any of it, but he still listened. I made porridge, made soup, soft foods he could swallow. He'd eat a few spoonfuls, then shake his head. I didn't push. I just wiped his mouth, pulled up his blanket, and kept reading. Some days he was more alert. On those days he'd tell me about when he was young, about skipping school to go fishing, about his first job at the factory, about the day he met my mom. She was wearing a yellow dress, standing under a maple tree, smiling at him. When he talked about Mom, his eyes lit up. After everything that happened, he still remembered her like that. A girl in a yellow dress, under a fall tree. I didn't ask more about the past. Didn't ask about the fights, the affair, the tears. We'd already talked about that. Now there were only the final days, only the fragile peace before goodbye. One evening in late November, Robert was unusually alert. I was reading when he reached out and lightly touched my hand. I stopped reading and looked at him. His eyes were brighter than usual. He looked at me carefully, like he was trying to memorize every detail of my face. "Sarah," he said, his voice clearer than normal, "I have something to tell you." I sat up straight. "Okay." He reached under his pillow and pulled out a brown envelope. It was old, a little wrinkled, like it had been hidden there for a long time. "I wrote this letter a long time ago," he said, his shaking hand holding it out to me. "But I never dared to send it. Read it after I'm gone, okay?" I took the envelope. It was light, but it felt heavy in my hands. My name was written on it in his messy handwriting. "You're not going to open it now?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'll read it later, when I'm ready." And he nodded, giving a weak smile. "Good, you know to wait for the right time." I put the letter on my desk next to Mom's picture. The two of them, one alive, one dead, an unread letter, a smile in a frame. That night, Robert got much worse. He struggled to breathe, each breath taking so much effort. I sat next to him, holding his hand. His hand was cold, even with extra blankets. Near dawn, he opened his eyes. He looked at me, his eyes bright and wet. Then he squeezed my hand lightly. For the first time in days, his hand had a little strength. "Promise me something," he whispered. "Okay. Don't live with hate." He looked at me, not looking away. "Don't let the past ruin your future. Live the life that your mom and I couldn't live." Tears ran down my face. I couldn't stop them. "I promise," I said, my voice choked. "I promise, Dad." He smiled. A real smile, not forced, not in pain. The smile of someone about to leave, but with peace in their heart. "I love you," he said. Then he closed his eyes. His hand went limp in mine. I sat still. I didn't cry anymore. Tears were still falling, but I wasn't sobbing. I just sat there, holding his hand, looking at his face. For the first time, I saw it truly peaceful. The wrinkles on his forehead seemed smoothed out. The corners of his mouth weren't tense anymore. His face, even though thin and pale, looked calm like a sleeping child. I sat there a long time. I don't know how long. All I know is when I looked up outside the window, the sky was bright. Rain. Soft fall rain falling on the glass, making little streams run down. The pitter-patter on the roof, on the street, on the last few leaves still hanging on. I heard traffic outside, car horns, people talking, the sounds of life going on. Somewhere out there, people were going to work, going to school, drinking morning coffee. Somewhere out there, people were laughing, arguing, loving. Somewhere out there, life kept spinning. Even though in this little room, someone had just left. I looked at Robert one last time. His face was still peaceful. I leaned down and put a soft kiss on his forehead. His skin was cold, but it didn't feel strange anymore. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered. I stood up and walked to the balcony. Rain was still falling. I stood there, letting the tiny raindrops hit my face, cool and fresh. I looked up at the gray sky, where clouds moved slowly. In my head, nothing, just a gentle emptiness. like a room that's been cleaned after a long time of being messy. I don't know if I forgave him. Maybe not. Maybe yes. But it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was I was here. I was with him in his final days. I heard him talk, held his hand, watched him leave in peace. And I promised him I'd live the life that he and Mom couldn't live. I'd keep that promise. I stood on the balcony a little longer, letting the soft rain wet my shoulders, letting the cool fall wind blow through my hair. Then I went back inside and looked at the empty living room with the hospital bed in the corner. I walked to my desk and picked up the brown envelope. Dad's letter. I didn't open it now. I put it in my desk drawer, next to the box of old photos. There would be a right time, when I was ready. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft and steady, like a final lullaby for a life that had just ended. Chapter 9, The Letter. Robert's funeral was on an early winter day. The sky was gray, but it didn't rain. A light wind blew, carrying the chill of the last days of the year. Only a few people came to say goodbye, me, Aunt Margaret, and 3 old neighbors from the neighborhood where he used to live. They came, lit incense, said a few kind words, and left. I stood there looking at my dad's picture on the altar. It was a photo of him when he was young, before he became an alcoholic. His face was bright, his hair still thick, his eyes clear, smiling gently. Nothing like the abuser I knew. Nothing like the thin, pale man in the hospital bed. A different person, a different life. I wondered, if there was no alcohol, what would his life have been like? No answer to that question. But I knew no matter what, I would still be his daughter. And he would still be my dad. Aunt Margaret hugged me tight before heading to the airport. "I'll come back to visit," she said. "You're not alone." I nodded and thanked her. Then I went back to my empty apartment. That night I sat alone in the living room. The hospital bed was gone. The corner of the room was empty now, just a pale white wall. I stared at that empty space, remembering the days he lay there, wheezing, watching me read. I opened my desk drawer and took out the brown envelope. Dad's letter. I held it in my hands for a long time. The envelope was a little wrinkled, the edges curled from being hidden under his pillow for so long. My name was written on it in his messy handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a yellowed piece of paper, handwritten, the ink a little faded. The handwriting was shaky, some spots smudged, maybe from tears. I started reading. "Sarah, my dear daughter, if you're reading this, I'm already gone." I took a deep breath and kept reading. "There's something I never told you because I was afraid it would break your heart. But now I want you to know the truth. You are not my biological daughter." My heart stopped for a second. I read that sentence again, then again. "You are not my biological daughter. I knew it when you were very small. The color of your hair, your eyes, they didn't look like me or anyone in my family. And there were whispers I accidentally heard. Your mom had a relationship with a man named David. I don't know for sure, but I understood. I was in so much pain I drank to forget. But I never blamed you. Do you know why?" My hands shook. Tears started falling. Because when I first saw you in the hospital, so tiny, all red, holding my fingers so tight, I already loved you. Blood doesn't matter compared to that moment. I told myself, this is my daughter. No one can take her from me. I tried to be a good father, but I was weak. Alcohol took me away. The drinking turned me into someone I hated. I hurt you, I hurt your mom. I can never forgive myself. I read on, tears streaming down my face. Not because I was in shock, not because I was in pain, but because these words showed me his heart, a heart that loved, but was weak, a soul full of mistakes, but also full of regret. But I want you to know, the last months of my life being taken care of by you were the happiest days of my life. Even if you did it out of duty, even if you didn't love me, I was still grateful. Every time you handed me a glass of water, every time you pulled up my blanket, I silently thanked God for giving me more time with you. I remembered those days. The times I'd put the food tray next to his bed without saying anything. The times I'd wash him with a cold face. The times I'd only say the shortest words, nothing more. And he was still grateful, still loved me. I can't change the past. I can't erase the wounds I caused. But I want you to know, I love you with everything I have, with the heart of a father, even if we're not related by blood. Live well, Sarah. Don't let the past define you. You deserve happiness. And if you can, forgive me. Not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace. I love you. Robert. I finished the letter. It slipped from my hands, gently landing on the floor. I sat still, tears flowing without stopping. Then I cried. Not the choked sobs from the day he died, but real crying from deep inside like a dam breaking after years of holding back. I sobbed out loud, cried so hard my chest hurt. I cried for mom, cried for dad, for mom, for myself. I cried because I realized for 25 years I really did have a father. Even though he wasn't perfect, even though he was wrong, caused so much pain. But his love for me was real. It was real. I remembered memories I'd buried long ago. Dad holding me in his arms, singing me to sleep. His voice was warm, a little off-key, but I'd still sleep soundly. Dad buying me a doll for my 5th birthday, a blonde doll in a pink dress. I carried it everywhere for a week. Dad looked at me and smiled, so happy. Dad taking me to the park, pushing me on the swing. "Higher, Daddy, higher," I'd yell, and he'd push me high and I could see the whole sky. Dad teaching me to draw. He drew terribly, cats that looked like mice, dogs that looked like who knows what. But he still drew, and I still said, "That's so good, Daddy." Those memories were buried under tons of pain and hate, but now they came back, clear as yesterday. I understood that people are more complicated than I thought. No one is completely good, no one is completely bad. My dad was both the loving father in those old memories and the abuser in the later years. Both were him. And me, I could hate what he did, but I couldn't deny his love for me. I wiped my tears, picked up the letter, and read it again. Every word, every line. Then I stood up and went out to the balcony. Outside, the sky was full of stars. The winter night was cold, but clear. Thousands of stars sparkled above, distant and beautiful. I looked up at them, feeling small in the vast universe. "Dad," I whispered. My voice was so soft only I could hear it, but I knew if someone was up there, they would hear. "Dad, I don't care if you're my real father or not. To me, you're my dad." Tears came again, but softer this time. "I forgive you. I forgive you for all the mistakes, all the pain, all the stolen childhood years. I forgive you because I know you loved me, and I forgive myself, too, for not being able to love you sooner." A gentle wind blew across the balcony, through my hair, across my face, warm even though it was cold. Like an answer from somewhere. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The cold night air stung my lungs, but it also made my soul feel light. When I opened my eyes, I looked up at the sky again. The stars were still there, sparkling, eternal. I knew what I had to do next. Live my life not chained by the past. Live the way my parents couldn't live. Live with an open heart, with forgiveness inside. I would remember Dad. I would remember Mom, but I wouldn't let pain drown me. I would remember love isn't in blood. It's in the years they lived with us, in the quiet sacrifices, in the small but real moments. I went back inside and closed the balcony door. In the living room, the empty corner didn't make me sad anymore. It was just a corner. The memories of Dad, both good and bad, would stay in my heart, not there. I put the letter back in the drawer next to the box of old photos. Tomorrow, I would start over. Call my clients, get back to work, meet Jenny for coffee, live. But tonight, I just wanted to sit here in this quiet room and feel peace for the first time in so many years. Outside, the wind kept blowing, the stars kept shining, and inside my heart, the pain had finally eased. Chapter 10, the first day of the rest of my life. I started cleaning out my apartment on an early December morning. Pale yellow sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up tiny dust particles dancing in the air. I opened closets, pulled everything out, sorted through each thing. A big pile of old clothes into a bag, donate to charity, books, keep the favorites, donate the rest. Kitchen stuff, pack in boxes, give away. 25 years of life packed into a few cardboard boxes. Then I saw the small brown wooden box in the corner of the closet. I opened it. Inside were the things I chose to keep. The family photo from when I was 5. 3 people, 3 smiling faces. Dad holding me, Mom sitting next to him. I looked at it for a long time, then put it in my suitcase. Dad's letter still in its brown envelope. I placed it next to the photo. A few of Mom's things. The wooden comb she always used. The handkerchief with the letter L embroidered on it. The silver bracelet she wore when she was young. I held each one carefully, remembering Mom. Not the perfect mother for my imagination, but the real mother. With all her strengths and weaknesses, with her love and her mistakes. I closed the wooden box and put it in my suitcase. The pieces of my past, I would take them with me. Everything else I left behind. That afternoon, my phone rang. "Sarah Collins," a polite woman's voice said. "I'm calling from Green Creative Design Company in Portland. We received your application and were very impressed. Could you do an online interview next week?" Portland, a city on the other side of the country. Somewhere I'd never been. "Yes, I can arrange that," I answered. 3 days later, I got an email saying I got the job. The salary was half again what I was making now. More interesting work. a fresh start. I sat staring at my computer screen, my heart calm, just a feeling of relief, like the last door to the past had closed, and another door was opening. Before I left, I met Aunt Margaret at the coffee shop near the airport. She'd flown in from California and stayed a few extra days to help me get ready. We sat in the corner of the shop, hot coffee steaming in the winter air. "You've made up your mind?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, Portland is far, but I think it's a good opportunity." She looked at me, her eyes a little red. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you sooner. All those years, I was afraid to come, afraid of your mom, afraid of old problems." I put my hand on hers. "It's okay. What matters is we have each other now." She cried. Tears ran down her cheeks, dropping onto the table. I cried too, but softer. Tears of healing, not pain. "I'll come visit you," I said. "And you come visit me, okay?" She nodded, wiping her tears. "Okay, I promise." We hugged for a long time in front of the coffee shop. Cold wind blew past, but my heart was warm. The next morning, I went to the airport. The taxi drove through familiar streets one last time. The old house where I grew up. The street I walked to school. The corner where I used to get coffee with friends. Everything faded behind me, like a slow-motion movie. I checked in, went through security, got on the plane. I sat in the window seat and buckled my seatbelt. When the plane took off, I looked outside. The city of Ohio got smaller and smaller below me. The buildings, the streets, the neighborhoods all became tiny, then disappeared behind the clouds. I closed my eyes. In my head, images came back. Dad in his hospital bed, his shaking hand holding out the letter. Mom in her yellow dress, standing under the maple tree, smiling at Dad. Me at 5 on the swing, yelling, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" Beautiful and sad memories mixed together, but they didn't hurt anymore. They were just pieces of a bigger picture. The picture of my life with all its light and dark colors. I opened my eyes. Outside the window, fluffy white clouds drifted by. The sun shone brightly, filling the whole cabin with warm light. I took out my phone and opened my notes. My fingers typed, "Dad, Mom, I'm okay now. I'll live well. I promise." I looked at those words for a moment, then turned off my phone and put it away. I smiled. The plane kept flying through the clouds. The sunlight hit my face, warm and gentle like a hug. I closed my eyes, feeling that warmth spread through my whole body. Inside me, a strange peace. No more fear, no more anger, no more guilt, no more pain. Just peace. For the first time in 25 years, I felt truly free. Free from the past, free from the wounds, free to love, to forgive, to start over. The plane soared higher, cutting through the clouds, heading toward the sun. I didn't know what Portland would be like. Didn't know about the new job. Didn't know what the future held. But I knew one thing, I would be okay. Because I'd learned to forgive. Forgive Dad, forgive Mom, and most importantly, forgive myself. And I'd realized love isn't in blood. It's in the years we live together, in the quiet sacrifices, in the small but real moments. My dad wasn't perfect. My mom wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect either. But we loved each other in our own ways. And that, in the end, was enough. I opened my eyes and looked out the window again. Below was a sea of white clouds. Above was the endless blue sky. The plane zoomed forward, toward the sun shining bright at the edge of the horizon. I smiled. The first day of the rest of my life. And this was how it began.